Overall, I really liked the movie Milk. Imagine that that's a statement you encounter in a review of the 2008 movie Milk, which is a biopic about San Francisco politician and gay rights activist Harvey Milk. I'll say it again. Overall, I really liked the movie Milk. So hopefully you recognize right away that it's too informal as a statement to include in a formal written review. And here's another problem with that statement. The reader might have different tastes than the reviewer. And from that statement, it's hard to know exactly what the reviewer liked about the movie and what they're basing that preference on. So consider this second statement. I thought Milk was a good movie. Okay, so equally informal, but now at least it seems the reviewer is attempting to evaluate the movie based on some objective criteria. So we're getting a little bit better. Here's a third one. The writing in the movie Milk is outstanding. Okay, so now the reviewer has honed in on a particular aspect of the film. The only problem is that's a generic statement that could be applied to any movie in which the writing is excellent. So we've got to get more specific. What makes the writing excellent? And how does it convey an understanding about the person who's at the center of this biographical film, whether it's a biopic or documentary, and about the world in which they lived, or the world in which we live now. So the writing hopefully accomplishes something important and conveys an understanding. And that's exactly what A.O. Scott gets at in his 2008 review of the movie Milk, when he identifies a particular aspect of the writing by Dustin Lance Black, who wrote the screenplay, that Scott thinks is especially well done. So let me read you his two sentences about the writing here. The strength of Mr. Black's script is that it grasps both the radicalism of Milk's political ambition and the pragmatism of his methods. Milk understands that modern politics thrive at the messy, sometimes glorious intersection of grubby interests and noble ideals. So I recognize that A.O. Scott is one of the more prominent movie critics working in America today, and that's a really sophisticated pair of sentences. So I'm not expecting that you'll magically become A.O. Scott over the course of this weekend as you revise your film reviews, but it's something to strive for. And what I want to point out to you about those two sentences is that Scott is identifying how the writer, Dustin Lance Black, conveys a real understanding of Harvey Milk's political acumen, in which he's able to unite both his revolutionary ideals, specifically about changing American society and creating more rights and respect for gays and lesbians at the time. This was before we had the LGBTQ plus acronym. And he also recognizes that Harvey Milk knew how to play the game, that he didn't consider himself above politics, and he sort of embraced the sometimes messy nature of politics and was able to marry those two aspects of his work. So the second point that I want to make, in addition to specificity in your commentary, is to embrace complexity and nuance. And I mentioned that this morning. So you don't need to have an overwhelmingly positive or negative review. It's okay to recognize strengths and flaws of the film. And that's why I shared with you David Sims' recent review of the 2019 Netflix movie The Two Popes by Fernando Meirelles, starring Anthony Hopkins as Pope Benedict and Jonathan Pryce as the incoming Pope Francis. So in this film, according to Sims, the chemistry between the two leads is remarkable. And it's funny at times, it's poignant, it's emotional, it's entertaining, and it reveals something about their philosophical differences. However, as Sims emphasizes toward the end of his review, the movie misses an opportunity to take on more serious issues about the church. So let me just read you a little bit from the last paragraph of Sims' review of The Two Popes. He writes of the writer, McCartan is too invested in the broad philosophical differences between the two men to get into what the Pope's choices will mean in practice. And while that makes The Two Popes a light viewing experience, it also makes it a shallow one. Excuse me. So Sims' concern is that he was ultimately disappointed by this film. He was expecting more from it. He was really hoping that the writer, Anthony McCartan, the director, Fernando Meirelles, would be willing to take on some of the more serious issues about church reform, about the Pope's reaction to and willingness to respond to the sexual abuse cases that were popping up all over the place, and that instead the writer and director chose to focus on a kind of imagined dynamic between these two very different church leaders, and that while it's fun and entertaining, it does not delve deep enough into the more serious issues. And so because he ends with that phrase about the experience being a shallow one, we get the sense that in the end, the film might be a good entertainment, but it does not convey any sort of important understanding about the church and the direction that it was headed with this transition or is currently headed. So lastly, I hope that through writing and revising your review on your chosen biographical film, you're also thinking about your expectations when you go into watching a movie. And I think you're all at the point right now where you're recognizing that certainly movies are entertaining, and we watch movies to escape from the world for a little bit, to be uplifted, to be entertained, to laugh, to experience vicariously, other people's challenges and triumphs. That movies can also be really instructive, and that they can help us better understand important people. They can help us better understand people from very different circumstances and backgrounds from ourselves, and can help us better understand the world. So please keep that in mind as you are revising your reviews. And then once you've made the more substantive changes to your reviews, maybe let it sit for a few hours or a day, and then come back to it and go over it carefully for grammar and spelling and punctuation, and also for word choice. Try not to lean too heavily on those more common words like forms of to be, to show, to use, to do, and the word thing or things, and try to be as precise as you can with your language. So I hope this has been helpful, and I'm really looking forward to reading the final drafts of your reviews, which are due by Monday night. And I look forward to seeing everybody in class on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.